Okay, first of all, thank you for to everyone out there basically who's sent me messages, kind words of support. I did say I was only going to do one video, but the reaction I've had from the first one has kind of spurred me on to do a bit more. This basically what I'm going to do now is, you know, those of us that are researching this, we're all at different stages of our awakening, of our research. I've come to realise, with some of the questions that I've been asked over the past week or so, one of the most difficult things that I find anyway personally is how do you broach this subject with people, without sounding like a conspiratorial nutcase, which they're quick to pull that out. The conditioning's strong through the media. Basically, anyone talking about this is a conspiratorial nutcase as far as the majority of people out there are concerned. So what I'm going to do here, I mean, most of you, might know a lot of these quotes, but I'm basically just going to go through the quotes that I've collected myself. I've got obviously notes, and I've got much material on memory cards, SD cards. So I'm going to be reading direct. These aren't my words. These are direct quotes from prominent people of the past couple of centuries. So this conspiratorial movement is most of us know, is nothing new, as I think I've mentioned before. So if you've heard these before, I apologise, but I find they're a great help. It's something that when people ask you, if you give them your opinion, it's your opinion. But if you're quoting and someone can reference check that quote from prominent people, presidents, bankers, commerce, generals, that kind of thing, in their own words, because they do tell us, these people, some of these bloodlines, you got Brzezinski in his book The Grand Chessboard, you've got Rockefeller in his Kiss the Boys Goodbye, something along them lines. Some of the stuff in there is pretty amazing how blatant they are. These arrogant beings. I won't call them men; they're beings. So I'll crack on before we run out of the 15 minutes. Anyway, we'll start off with Woodrow Wilson, 28th President of the US between 1913 and 1921. He said this, Woodrow Wilson, in 1916. "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer government by free opinion, no longer government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." So he's telling you there. Second one from the same guy, Woodrow Wilson again. "Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete and pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." So there we've got an ex-president basically telling you, he and other people that know what's going on behind the scenes, this network, they're afraid of something. The next one is Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli of England, 1844 this. "The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes." So he's telling you, if you're not in the club, if you're not one of them, you ain't going to get to find out what exactly is going on. This one's interesting. This is John F. Hylan, Mayor of New York, 1918 to 1925. He said, "The real menace of our republic is the invisible government which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy length over the city, the state and the nation. Like the octopus of real life, it operates under cover of self-created screen. At the head of the octopus are the Rockefeller Standard Oil interests and a small group of powerful banking houses, generally referred to as international bankers. This little coterie of powerful international bankers virtually run the US government for their own selfish purposes. They practically control both political parties." 1918. I find that amazing, They're telling you. And people still say conspiracy, conspiracy. Okay, let's get on to the more sort of well-known ones. Mayor Amschel Rothschild, bankers as we know, this is 1828. He said, "Allow me to issue the control of the money of a nation, and I care not who writes the laws." So they've got a self-admission there of they're a law unto themselves. Family member, Baron Nathan Mayer Rothschild, he said, "I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire. The man that controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the money supply." You know, cocky git. Rockefeller, David here, he said, people yield themselves with perfect docility to our moulding hands. So what are they trying to mould the human race into? I think we're at that point where we're getting a good idea. David Rockefeller again, this was June 1991, and this was in an address to the Trilateral Commission in a meeting there in June of 1991. Check that out. He said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected the promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years, but the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries." So he's telling you, the agenda's moving on perfectly. Thanks to the cover they get and in the cooperation they get from, the media prostitutes, basically. David Rockefeller again, this was September 23rd, 1994. "This present window of opportunity, during which a truly peaceful and independent world order might be built, will not be open for too long. We are on the verge of global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order." And I mean, after September the 11th, that sounds like an admission of guilt to me, the right major crisis. We've got General Douglas MacArthur here. He was Chief of Staff of the United States Army during 1930s, and he played a prominent role during World War II. He said, "I am concerned for the security of our great nation, not so much because of any threat from without, but because of the insidious forces working from within." So he's telling you straight there. Henry Kissinger, as I've mentioned, from his book Kiss the Boys Goodbye. Anyone who knows military men may know this one. He said, "Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy." There we go. Next one, John Swinton, 1829 to 1901. He was basically the former New York Times editor-in-chief. And he said, "We are tools and vessels of rich men behind the scenes. We're the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes." Just admission of guilt after admission of guilt, if anyone ever questions you. This one's pretty well known as well. This is Barbara Bush. Bar Bush. She said this March the 18th, 2003. This was 2 days before the invasion and slaughter of the Iraqi peoples and, the invasion of the ancient Sumer land. She said, when asked about television viewing habits, she said this on live TV, "I watch none. He," meaning her husband, "sits and listens and reads books, because I know perfectly well that, and don't take any offence, 90% of what I hear on television is supposition. When we're talking about the news, and he's not as understanding of my pettiness about that, but why should we hear about body bags and deaths, and how many, and what date's going to happen, and how many this or that, or what do you suppose? Or I mean, it's not relevant, so why should I waste my beautiful mind on something like that?" There you go. Next one. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Bohemian Grove. And this is a quote. I mean, if you're not, then get into it. Have a look at what's decided and what policies are discussed by prominent people at Bohemian Grove and have been, for years, for decades. Well, this is a quote from Nixon. Always makes me giggle this, but he said, "The Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, it is the most faggy goddamn thing you have ever imagined. With that San Francisco crowd, I can't shake hands with anybody from San Francisco." It's pretty well documented how many, male rent boys these guys cite. They fly in. It's a male-dominated get-together, shall we say? Okay. The next one's from, if you've done any research on WHO, the World Health Organization, this is a highly suspect organisation. Illuminati through and through, whatever you want to call it. This was Brock Chisholm, former director of the WHO, World Health Organization. He said, "To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas." All of them have gone, apart from the religious dogmas. I believe next year after the Olympics, or during the London Olympics, the religious dogmas, the religious thing, will be removed, or attempted to be removed. The religions have served their purpose up until this point. Here's Father Bush here, George H.W., 1992. "If the American people had ever known the truth about what we Bushes have done to this nation, we would be chased down the streets and lynched." Okay. Here's Baby Bush, his son, and this is a comparison between an Adolf Hitler, part of an Adolf Hitler speech, announcing the Gestapo to the people back in Nazi Germany. Hitler said, "An evil exists that threatens every man, woman and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland." Bush said, "An evil exists that threatens every man, woman and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland." Interesting. Check the time, 12 minutes, okay. This is by James Paul Warburg. His nephew, basically. He's the son of Paul Moritz Warburg, nephew to Felix Warburg and Jacob Schiff, both of Kuhn and Loeb and Co. They poured millions into the Russian Revolution through James's brother Max, banker to the German government. This is from the Citizen Report. He said, "We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether the world government will be achieved by conquest or consent." So, you're getting it whether you like it or not. John F. Kennedy, speaking at Columbia University, 10 days before his assassination, this was. "The high office of president has been used to foment a plot to destroy the Americans' freedom, and before I leave office, I must inform the citizens of this plight." 10 days later, shot. More so for his financial pursuits, just like Abraham Lincoln with the greenbacks. That's the reason them two guys were shot, to get away from the Fed. This last one here, I'm just going to leave you with, which is just something that struck a chord with me. I was watching a rerun of the Omen films. If you must watch, all three parts of those films to go, because they're telling you there. If you can read through the symbolism, if you can read through through what they're saying, they're telling you with the omens, what's really going on here as regards to this, to politicians and to the church and how it all interlinks. And this is a quote from the 1976 original Omen movie by Father Brennan. I'm going to leave you with this. It struck a chord with me when I watched it. I've heard it so many times, but when I watched it a week or two ago, this it finally, the meaning of it, came into realisation for me. So, Father Brennan says in that film, "When the Jews return to Zion, and a comet rips the sky, and the Holy Roman Empire rises, then you and I must die. From the eternal sea he rises, creating armies on either shore, turning man against his brother, till man exists no more." So, they're telling you through those Hollywood films, the wood of the holly tree used by the Magi back in the day. So there we go. I'll see you all soon.